December 29th, 1944. Maguire Field, Mindoro, Philippine Islands. The tropical night is absolutely black. No moon. Cloud cover blocking even starlight. The kind of darkness where you can't see your hand in front of your face. Major Carroll C. Smith climbs into the cockpit of his P-61 Black Widow, a massive twin-engine fighter painted flat black to disappear against darkness itself. Behind him, in a compartment filled with glowing radar scopes and electronic equipment, Lieutenant Philip Porter settles into position as radar operator. What you're about to see was hidden for decades. If you want more stories like this, subscribe to Cold War Black Files. Somewhere out there, 12 Japanese bombers are approaching American airfields. They're flying under the protection of total darkness, relying on night as their shield. Japanese bomber crews have learned that darkness makes them essentially invisible. American fighters can't find what they can't see. For most of the war, this has been an absolute truth. Night missions have the lowest loss rates. Night is where Japanese bombers feel safe. But something is different tonight. Smith's aircraft carries a secret that changes everything about aerial combat after sunset. Mounted in the nose of the P-61 is a device that sees without eyes. The SCR-720 radar, a 400-pound collection of vacuum tubes, cathode ray displays, and radio transmission equipment that can detect aircraft 5 miles away in complete darkness. Smith receives clearance and advances the throttles. The twin Pratt and Whitney engines roar, each producing 2,000 horsepower. The Black Widow accelerates down the runway and lifts into complete blackness. No horizon, no reference points. Just instruments and the dim red glow of the cockpit lighting. Smith is flying on instruments from the moment the wheels leave the ground. The P-61 Black Widow is unlike any other American fighter in the Pacific. It weighs over 30,000 pounds fully loaded. It has a wingspan of 66 feet, wider than a B-25 medium bomber. It carries 4 20mm cannons in the belly and 4 50 caliber machine guns in a dorsal turret. It's not built for speed or maneuverability. It's built for one purpose: hunting at night. Most fighter pilots in 1944 consider night interception nearly impossible. The mathematics seem insurmountable. 2 aircraft, each traveling hundreds of miles per hour, trying to find each other in 3-dimensional space with no visibility. The sky is enormous. An aircraft is tiny. The probability of a random encounter is essentially 0. Even if you somehow spot an enemy aircraft visually at night, closing to firing range without losing sight of it requires skills that border on supernatural. Conventional wisdom says it can't be done reliably. It's a lottery. You might get lucky once in 100 flights. That conventional wisdom is about to be shattered. Porter activates the SCR-720 radar system. The cathode ray tube flickers to life, beginning to paint a picture of the sky using reflected radio waves instead of light. This isn't guesswork. This isn't luck. This is physics being weaponized in a completely new way. This is the future of air combat being born over the black waters of the Philippine Sea. The radar sends out pulses of radio energy at a frequency of 3,000 megahertz. These pulses travel at the speed of light, spreading out in a cone ahead of the aircraft. When these pulses hit something solid, like an aircraft made of aluminum and steel, they bounce back. The radar receiver captures these echoes and displays them as bright spots on Porter's scope. The position of each spot tells him exactly where the target is relative to the P-61. The brightness tells him how large it is. By watching how the spot moves across the scope, measuring its rate of movement, he can determine the target's heading and speed. Porter is seeing aircraft that are 5 miles away in total darkness. He's tracking them in real time. He's watching them maneuver. He can measure their altitude, their bearing, their distance. He can guide Smith to an intercept position without either of them ever laying eyes on the enemy. He's become the most important person in the aircraft. The pilot can only do what the radar operator tells him to do. This is revolutionary. This changes everything about air combat. But it requires a level of trust that goes against every instinct a fighter pilot has. Smith has to fly where Porter tells him to fly, even when he can see nothing. He has to believe in invisible radio waves bouncing off invisible aircraft. He has to surrender his autonomy to a glowing screen in the compartment behind him. Porter's voice comes through the intercom. Contact. Bearing 015. Range 4 miles. Multiple targets. His voice is calm. Almost conversational. He's done this before, but never with this many targets, never with this much at stake. Smith banks the Black Widow toward the indicated bearing. He's flying blind, trusting instruments, trusting Porter's radar picture. The P-61 cuts through the darkness at over 200 miles per hour. The big fighter handles smoothly despite its size. It was designed for this. Stable flight platform, gentle controls, an aircraft that won't kill you if you take your eyes off the instruments for a few seconds. Porter calls corrections. Turn left 5 degrees. Target now at 3 miles. Altitude appears similar to ours. Smith follows the instructions precisely. His hands move on the controls with practiced precision. Years of instrument flight training are paying off now. The radar operator becomes the eyes of the aircraft. The pilot becomes the instrument of interception. It's a partnership that requires absolute coordination. Below them, the ocean is invisible. Around them, the night air is smooth, no turbulence, good conditions for radar tracking. Porter watches the bright return on his scope grow stronger as range decreases. He's also tracking the other aircraft in the formation, making mental notes about their positions. This isn't just about one target. This is about all 12 Japanese bombers out there in the darkness. Range 2 miles. Porter's voice remains calm, professional. The radar scope shows the target clearly now. A single bomber separated slightly from the formation, maybe 500 feet lower than the others. Either the pilot is less experienced or his altimeter is miscalibrated. Either way, it makes him the easiest target. Porter makes the tactical decision to go for this one first. Target bearing now 010, range 1.5 miles. Smith adjusts course. The P-61's engines maintain steady power. Fuel consumption is good. They have hours of endurance if needed. The Black Widow was designed for long patrols, long pursuits. It carries enough fuel to stay airborne for more than 4 hours at cruise power. 1 mile, 3,000 feet. Porter's calling range in feet now, more precise. 2,000 feet. Smith strains his eyes forward, looking for any hint of the target. Still nothing. Just blackness. But he trusts Porter. The radar doesn't lie. 1,500 feet. And then Smith sees it. A dark shape against slightly less dark sky. The Japanese bomber, a twin-engine aircraft, probably a Mitsubishi G4M Betty. The crew has no idea death is approaching from behind. They're flying straight and level, heading toward their target, confident in the protection of darkness. They believe they're invisible. They've flown dozens of night missions. They've never been intercepted in darkness before. Why would tonight be different? Smith closes to 400 feet, easing the throttles back to match the bomber's speed. The range is perfect. Close enough for accurate fire. Far enough to avoid debris from the explosion that's about to happen. He centers the target in his gun sight. The bomber fills his windscreen now. He can see details. The greenhouse nose. The wing-mounted engines. The long cylindrical fuselage. Smith presses the trigger. 4 20mm cannons and 4 50 caliber machine guns erupt simultaneously. The night explodes with muzzle flashes. Tracers streak through the darkness, every fifth round burning bright. The first burst walks up the bomber's fuselage from tail to wing root. The second burst concentrates on the right engine. Armor-piercing rounds tear through aluminum skin, through engine components, through fuel tanks. The Japanese bomber's right engine explodes. Flame blooms orange and yellow against the darkness, suddenly illuminating the scene. Smith can see the bomber clearly now in the light of its own destruction. The aircraft begins to yaw right, the good engine overpowering the dead one. Then the fire spreads to the wing fuel tank. The entire right wing becomes a torch. Smith breaks away hard, banking left and down to avoid debris. Behind him, the Japanese bomber begins to fall, trailing flames like a meteor. The fire illuminates the ocean surface below for a moment. Then the bomber hits the water and the light goes out. Darkness returns instantly. Total. Absolute. As if the bomber never existed. But Porter is already tracking the next target on radar. He didn't watch the kill. He was scanning his scope, finding the next bomber, measuring its position and course. There's no time for celebration. There are 11 more enemy aircraft out there. Second contact, bearing 350. Range 5 miles. Smith racks the P-61 around toward the new heading. His heart is pounding, but his hands are steady. First kill confirmed. The technique works. The radar works. They can do this. 79 minutes remain in this mission. 3 more Japanese bombers are about to be destroyed. What's happening over Mindoro tonight isn't just one successful engagement. It's a demonstration of an entirely new form of warfare. Smith and Porter are proving that radar can turn night from the defender's ally into the attacker's weapon. They're proving that technology can overcome the most fundamental limitation of human senses. They're showing that the future of air combat won't be about who has the sharpest eyes or the fastest reflexes. It will be about who has the best electronics and knows how to use them. The second target is flying higher than the first, at around 15,000 feet. Porter guides Smith through a climbing intercept. The P-61's powerful engines pull the heavy fighter up through the darkness. Airspeed bleeds off as they climb, but the engines have power to spare. Range decreases steadily. 4 miles. 3 miles. 2 miles. This bomber is more alert than the first. As Smith closes to within a mile, the Japanese aircraft begins a gentle turn. Maybe they saw the first bomber's death. Maybe they're just being cautious. Either way, Porter adjusts his guidance immediately. Turn right. Follow his turn. Smith banks to follow. The pursuit becomes more complex. Porter has to predict where the target will be, not where it is now. He has to account for both aircraft speeds, both aircraft's turn rates, the geometry of pursuit curves. His brain is doing calculus in real time, watching the radar scope, calling corrections to Smith every few seconds. The P-61 slides into position behind the bomber. Smith can see it now, silhouetted against slightly lighter sky. The Japanese crew still doesn't know they're being followed. Night fighters are supposed to be impossible. This close pursuit in total darkness isn't supposed to happen. Smith fires. The same devastating convergence of cannons and machine guns. The same result. The bomber's port engine disintegrates. Fire erupts. The aircraft rolls left, entering a spin. Smith watches it fall, spiraling down trailing flame. It hits the ocean and disappears. 2 down. 10 to go. Other night fighter crews monitoring the radio channels are listening to this unfold. They're hearing Porter's calm radar calls. They're hearing Smith's brief acknowledgements. They're hearing the reports of enemy aircraft destroyed. They're beginning to understand what aggressive radar interception can achieve. This isn't luck. This isn't random chance. This is systematic hunting. The 418th Night Fighter Squadron has been developing these tactics for months. Radar-guided interception is new. The SCR-720 only became operational earlier in 1944. Most squadrons are still learning how to use it. Many pilots don't trust it. Many radar operators haven't figured out how to read the scope effectively in combat conditions. But Smith and Porter have trained together for hundreds of hours. They've flown practice intercepts against friendly aircraft. They've learned the radar's quirks and limitations. They know how ground return clutters the scope at low altitude. They know how rain can create false targets. They know how to distinguish a bomber from a fighter based on the radar return's characteristics. They've turned radar operation from experimental technology into practical combat technique. Porter calls out the third target. This one is part of the main formation, flying with other bombers in loose trail. More dangerous. If Smith's muzzle flashes are seen by the other bombers, they might scatter, making further intercepts harder. But Porter has a plan. He guides Smith to approach from below and behind, using the ocean's darkness as backdrop. Smith follows the guidance. The intercept is textbook perfect. He closes to 300 feet before firing. The cannons tear into the bomber's belly. The aircraft explodes, a massive fireball that lights up the sky. For a moment, Smith can see the other bombers in the formation, scattered around the dying aircraft. Then darkness returns and they're invisible again. But not to Porter. His radar shows all of them. He's tracking 5 contacts simultaneously now. He picks the nearest one, 4th target, bearing 020, range 2 miles. Smith is becoming exhausted. The physical strain of instrument flying in total darkness is immense. Every muscle is tense. His eyes ache from staring at dimly lit instruments. His hands are cramped on the controls. But there's no time to rest. Porter is guiding him toward another target. This interception is the fastest yet. Smith has the technique down now. Porter's guidance is precise. They close from 2 miles to firing range in less than 3 minutes. Smith fires. The bomber burns and falls. 4 kills in one mission. 4 aircraft that thought they were invisible, found and destroyed by radio waves. 80 minutes of combat. The remaining Japanese bombers scatter, abandoning their attack, fleeing into the darkness. Some head north, some turn west. They're no longer thinking about their mission. They're thinking about survival. Smith wants to pursue. There are still targets on radar, but fuel is getting low. Ammunition is down to 20%. Porter makes the call. Time to go home. Smith agrees reluctantly. He turns the Black Widow back toward Maguire Field. The flight back is quiet. Smith hand-flies the aircraft on instruments, watching the altimeter, the compass, the airspeed indicator. Porter navigates, checking their position, making sure they're heading for the right airfield. Below them, the ocean remains invisible. Around them, the night remains absolute. As they approach Mindoro, Porter contacts the tower. The controller already knows about the mission. Radio intercepts from other aircraft have been relayed. 4 confirmed kills. The controller sounds excited. Smith just sounds tired. The landing is routine. Smith flies an instrument approach, breaking out of the darkness at 500 feet with the runway lights visible ahead. The P-61 touches down smoothly. Smith taxis to the squadron area and shuts down the engines. The sudden silence is overwhelming after hours of engine noise. When they climb out of the aircraft, other pilots crowd around. Ground crew are already counting the empty brass casings on the ground beneath the gun ports, confirming ammunition expenditure. The debriefing starts immediately. How did you do it? How did you find them? How did you make 4 intercepts in total darkness? Walk us through every step. Smith and Porter spend 2 hours in debriefing, going over every detail. Porter draws diagrams showing the radar picture, explaining how he tracked multiple targets, how he prioritized which bomber to engage first. Smith explains the flying techniques, how he maintained instrument flight while maneuvering for intercept, how he judged firing range in darkness. The intelligence officers take notes frantically. This information is gold. This is the kind of tactical innovation that can change the course of air campaigns. Within days, the debriefing report is being distributed to other night fighter squadrons across the Pacific Theater. The answer spreads through the night fighter community. Aggressive radar employment, trust the electronics, train the radar operators to expert level, develop tactics specifically for radar intercepts, hunt, don't patrol, use the radar to find targets, then close aggressively for the kill. Don't wait for targets to come to you. Go find them. The 418th Night Fighter Squadron takes these lessons and runs with them. Every crew studies Smith and Porter's mission. Pilot to pilot, radar operator to radar operator. The techniques spread. Training intensifies. Radar operators spend hours on the scopes, learning to read returns, learning to distinguish aircraft from ground clutter, learning to track multiple targets simultaneously. Pilots practice instrument flying until they can fly perfect intercept profiles blind. The results are immediate. The squadron's kill rate skyrockets. Missions that previously resulted in 0 contacts now end with confirmed kills. Japanese night bomber operations over American positions become increasingly costly. Bomber crews who survive night missions report being intercepted in complete darkness by invisible attackers. Japanese intelligence can't figure out how it's being done. They suspect some kind of detection equipment, but don't understand radar technology well enough to develop effective countermeasures. Within 2 months, the 418th Night Fighter Squadron becomes the highest-scoring P-61 unit in the Pacific Theater. They protect invasion forces. They shoot down Japanese aircraft attempting to attack American ships and bases. They make night operations safe for Allied forces. The Black Widows become feared by Japanese aircrew. Night missions, once the safest operations, become dangerous. When American forces prepare for the Lingayen Gulf landings in January 1945, night fighters provide crucial protection. Japanese aircraft attempting to attack the invasion fleet under darkness find themselves intercepted by P-61s guided by radar. Bombers are shot down before reaching the ships. Kamikaze aircraft are destroyed before they can crash into vessels. The landings succeed partly because the night sky is controlled by aircraft that can see in the dark. The tactical innovations don't stop with basic intercepts. Crews develop new techniques. They learn to use radar to patrol specific areas, establishing barrier patrols that nothing can cross undetected. They learn to coordinate multiple P-61s, with one aircraft driving targets toward another. They learn to use altitude tactically, intercepting from above or below depending on the tactical situation. The radar itself improves. Maintenance crews learn to tune the equipment for maximum performance. Modifications are made to improve reliability. New scopes with better resolution are installed. The SCR-720 evolves from experimental equipment into a precision instrument, but the human element remains crucial. The best radar equipment in the world is useless without a skilled operator. The 418th success comes from the partnership between pilot and radar operator. These aren't solo fighter pilots making individual decisions. These are teams working together, each member essential to success. Porter's role is just as important as Smith's, maybe more important. The radar operator finds the target, tracks the target, guides the intercept. The pilot executes the interception, but only because the radar operator tells him where to go. It's a different kind of air combat, requiring different skills, different training, different mindset. The principles discovered over Mindoro that December night in 1944 don't end with World War II. Radar-guided interception becomes fundamental to all modern air combat. Every fighter aircraft today carries descendants of that SCR-720 radar. Every fighter pilot trains in beyond visual range intercepts. The techniques that Smith and Porter pioneered become doctrine, refined and improved, but built on the same foundation. Modern air-to-air combat happens at distances where pilots never see each other. Radar does the seeing. Electronics guide the weapons. Missiles launch at targets 50 miles away, guided by radar returns. The human operators manage the systems and make the tactical decisions, but the actual detection and tracking happens through radio waves, just like it did over Mindoro. The F-14 Tomcat that defended carrier battle groups in the 1980s used the AWG-9 radar system, directly descended from wartime night fighter radars. The F-15 Eagle uses the APG-63, even more sophisticated but built on the same principles. Modern fighters like the F-22 and F-35 have radars so advanced they can track hundreds of targets simultaneously, but they're still using radio waves to see what human eyes cannot. The role of the radar intercept officer in aircraft like the F-14 is directly descended from radar operators like Porter. They manage the sensors, track the targets, coordinate the intercept. The pilot flies the aircraft, but the RIO runs the engagement. Same partnership, same division of labor, same requirement for absolute trust and coordination. Even the tactics are similar. Modern fighters establish barrier combat air patrols, just like the P-61s did. They use radar to patrol specific areas, maintaining coverage, ensuring nothing crosses undetected. They coordinate multiple aircraft to bracket targets, cutting off escape routes. The technology has advanced enormously, but the fundamental concepts remain the same. The P-61 Black Widow was retired after the war. Production ended in 1945. Most surviving aircraft were scrapped. Only a handful survive in museums today. The 418th Night Fighter Squadron was deactivated in 1947, its pilots and crews returning to civilian life. Major Carroll Smith and Lieutenant Philip Porter went back to America, back to normal lives, their wartime service becoming memories. But what they proved that night, what they demonstrated with 4 kills in 80 minutes, became the foundation for everything that followed. They proved that night interception wasn't impossible. They proved that technology could defeat darkness. They proved that invisible radio waves could find invisible aircraft. They proved that aggressive tactics and expert radar operation could turn night fighting from defensive luck into offensive certainty. December 29, 1944. 4 Japanese bombers destroyed in 80 minutes. Not through chance, not through luck, through radar, through technique, through partnership between pilot and radar operator, through trust in technology, through a new way of seeing that made the night sky as transparent as day. Night was supposed to protect the Japanese bombers. Darkness was supposed to make them safe. For years it did. Night missions had the lowest casualty rates. Bomber crews volunteered for night operations because they were safer. The mathematics of aerial combat favored the bomber at night. Fighters couldn't find them, couldn't track them, couldn't shoot them down. But Smith and Porter changed that equation. They turned night from sanctuary into hunting ground. The Black Widow hunted in darkness, and darkness was never safe again. The legacy extends beyond tactics and technology. It's about the human ability to adapt, to innovate, to take new tools and develop new techniques. The SCR-720 radar was just equipment. Smith and Porter made it into a weapon system. They figured out how to use it. They developed the tactics. They trained until they could execute those tactics under combat stress in total darkness. That's the real story. Not just the technology, not just the kills, but the process of learning how to fight in a completely new way. How to overcome the limitations of human senses. How to trust instruments and electronics over instinct. How to work as a team when traditional fighter combat was all about individual skill. The night sky over the Pacific in 1944 was a laboratory. Every mission was an experiment. Every engagement taught lessons. Smith and Porter's mission on December 29th was the culmination of months of development, the demonstration that proved the concept worked. And then those lessons spread. Other crews learned. Other squadrons adopted the tactics. The innovation multiplied across the theater. By war's end, radar-equipped night fighters were standard. The techniques were proven. The training was established. What had been experimental became routine. That's how warfare evolves. Not through sudden revolution, but through incremental innovation. Someone tries something new. It works. Others adopt it. It spreads. It becomes doctrine. And eventually it becomes so standard that people forget it was ever new, ever experimental, ever doubted. Today, no one questions whether radar-guided interception works. It's fundamental to air combat. But in 1944, it was revolutionary. Smith and Porter were pioneers, proving something that conventional wisdom said couldn't be done. 4 kills in 80 minutes. The night the darkness became transparent,